I'd say that's enough waiting. Greetings and salutations, new and returning viewers. Gene the Revenant here, former aspiring conqueror, now prisoner inside of a vault. I spend my incarceration playing old games and occasionally watching old movies. And tonight I'm enjoying a special stream. Remembering the first year I've been reviewing movies on this channel. I say I'm reviewing movies, but they're really more just brief overviews. I've just, on occasion, I've just pulled out old or obscure movies that have been held in the archives of this vault, and just giving a brief description of some of their plot lines, and mentioning and rambling a bit about what I enjoy. I'll be adding the playlist for these movies to the description of this stream after I'm done. But the objective for this evening is just to look back on what I've pulled out of the vault, and maybe discuss a little bit about why I chose them and what I enjoy about these movies. Or what I did not enjoy in certain cases. I'm actually going to be speaking a little bit more off the cuff than I do in my reviews, so you'll have to excuse me if I tend to ramble a little bit. And I thought I also fixed a few settings on YouTube Studio and in OBS, but unfortunately it seems there is still about a 20-second delay between OBS and YouTube, so odds are, if there are comments in the chat, you'll have to, again, forgive me for not responding as quickly as I would like. Right now, I think I'll just consider it a success if I don't have massive buffering or lag issues. But let's not dwell on potential technical issues. I'm sure those will become apparent all on their own. Instead, let's go look. I'm going to go look. Let's start looking over the movies I've reviewed this past year. I don't know what's in the chat, so I guess I'll just be rambling on my own. All right, let's get started. So the first movie I ever decided to review, or introduce, as the case may be, was a classic, Raiders of the Lost Ark. And the main reason I chose this one was because I wanted to start my channel off with a classic, something that would be widely recognized, mostly to bring in the views, and mostly because I can appreciate a movie that had such devotion to practical effects and stunt work. Raiders of the Lost Ark definitely was a classic, and pretty much everything meshed well in this one, and it was fun to rewatch too. Yeah, excellent cast, good performances, good scripting, and especially good effects, stunt work, choreography. This was just a really fun one to rewatch. And I should probably add a list of these titles in case anyone shows up. And that's probably a little bit too small. That's better. So Raiders of the Lost Ark. Fun adventure movie, great performances all around. And considering that this movie that the Indiana Jones series was also about finding old artifacts and bringing them to light, I thought it was appropriate for this channel for that reason. I remember and that was back when I was using my first model. Good times. Oh, this was a fun one. So the Sonic franchise, I mentioned it before on my streams and in a few videos, but the Sonic franchise is one that's been with me since I was but a little Revenant. And early experiences were with a couple of the Genesis games and the also the cartoons, the Western cartoons. There was Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog, Sonic Sat AM, the Saturday morning one with the Knothole Freedom Fighters. I also collected plenty of the Archie comics, the Archie comics line of Sonic the Hedgehog stories. And this movie was is a little bit more obscure in the franchise. As I recall, it started as an OVA back in Japan. Originally 2 episodes for a series that never took off, or at least that's what I've heard. But it did make for a very nice 1 hour movie. And this one is just a lot of fun to watch. Excellent animation, good characterization, a few story elements that were unique to this movie, mostly in the Land of the Sky and the Land of the Darkness, the world in 2 layers that was built up in here. Personally, I would, again, it was a series that never took, again, it was a pilot for a series that never took off, but I think it would have been interesting for this to have become a greater mainstay in the franchise. Would have liked to see how things developed over time. Where are those hotkeys? I guess. I also really enjoyed it because this is probably my favorite incarnation of Metal Sonic throughout the entire Hedgehog franchise. That machine is basically a Terminator with super speed. So this was fun and just a nice little way to reconnect with my childhood. Now, I brought up Temple of Doom in my channel, mostly just as the logical next step to follow up on the first Indiana Jones movie. And I was actually surprised that, well, we all know that it was probably the weakest of the trilogy, because there are only 3 movies. But I was actually surprised with how good it was. Granted, it was not without its faults. The tone the tone did tend to flip between seriously dramatic and pretty cartoonish at times. I think the less we say about the inaccurate portrayals of Indian culture, the better. Let's not dwell on that. That being said, performances, again, were good, and we had the same... the filmmakers had the same devotion to practical effects, stunts, and choreography as in the first movie. Granted, Willie is still as much dead weight as I had previously thought. But other than that, it's still a very entertaining movie. No, the character Short Round has gotten some flack, well, back in the day, but I think people have warmed up to the character over the years. Personally, I think he had some of the best lines in that movie, and I also really enjoyed his father-son dynamic with Indy. So yes, Temple of Doom. Perhaps not the best of the trilogy, but still a very fun entry. Excuse me. Oof. Now this one, this one's a special one. Definitely a classic in the anime circles. For one thing, the animation is spectacular. Lots of detail, both in characters, fight choreography, and especially all the tech. Probably one of the main codifiers of the cyberpunk genre, especially in anime. And I think what also makes it special is how it approaches the ever-growing question of transhumanism, specifically the shrinking barrier between man and machine in the future. Given how things are developing with AI and robotics, I think this movie is starting to become more and more this movie's going to become more and more relevant as time goes on. I never saw the live action one starring Scarlett Johansson, and from what I've heard, I don't think I really need to. But if you're ever in the mood for a mature, thought-provoking anime movie with excellent animation and a unique tone, Ghost in the Shell is a good place to start. And I suppose I should say now that I know it seems like I'm just breezing through these quickly, but I do have about 2 dozen entries on this list that I'm looking back over. And I do have this playlist of videos up on my channel already, so again, this is more just kind of a brief, just touching back briefly on on the work I've done in the past year. Not to mention there's nobody in the chat right now, so I don't have anyone to bounce opinions or questions off of. So we're just breezing right along. Oh, yes. Now this one's a fun... Oh, shoot, I got the wrong eyes. No, this one's an interesting one. 1920s, very early filmmaking, and still a very good film to watch. Very interesting film. It's a very interesting viewing experience, especially in today's world of CGI, crazy editing, ballooning budgets. The original Nosferatu is a very unique look at horror. And it really is interesting to see how they handled certain effects, or how they went for certain effects and accomplished all that imagery when they didn't have the luxury of CGI or modern editing. Now, the copy I actually used on my channel was part of a compilation of, I think my DVD set is a collection of about 50 different horror movies. And the one I had actually has the Bram Stoker's Dracula naming conventions added in. But at some point, I really do want to get a Blu-ray of the original cut of Nosferatu with the alternate names. I also think that the black and white old cinematography of the time helps contribute to the unsettling ambiance in this movie. Everything's a little bit creepier without any sound, and the jittery skipping motions of the camera work kind of help to heighten that unsettling feeling throughout. The movie's also in the public domain, so you don't really have to worry about stepping on any toes if you want to go watch it on most major streaming platforms. And by streaming platforms, I just mean your standard YouTube, anywhere you can watch for free. It's in the public domain, so not an issue at all. Oh, Darkstalkers. This was a fun one. A 4-episode OVA, that's very nice to watch, especially in the Halloween month. I believe, yes, it was October when I brought this one up on my channel. They don't make them like this anymore. This was based on the Capcom fighting game, which sadly has not gotten much attention in recent years. I did get a compilation of Capcom games, of Capcom fighters. I really should play the game for my channel at least once. But the OVA, 4 episodes, 45 minutes each, makes for a good viewing. You can binge it all in an evening. Has a great, it does a good job of setting up. Oh, shoot, yes, I did do something wrong. Okay, sorry about that. But yeah, the OVA does a great job of establishing that sense of gothic horror throughout, and it's great to see I do like all the interpretations of certain classic movie monsters. We've got werewolves, vampires, mummies, zombies, catfolk, and yes. Funny thing is, it actually offered a surprisingly good amount of character development considering the limited runtime. Just about, I mean, there is a main storyline of the encroaching monster Pyron approaching Earth, and some of the strongest creatures of the night preparing for his arrival. But there are also several subplots and character arcs to watch. And the animation's great too. It's that delightful bit of 90s traditional anime, or that 90s anime style. Again, they don't make it like they used to. And funny thing is also, in regards to the character arcs, is that I really find myself enjoying Donovan's story as time passes. I believe in the series he's referred to as a vampire, half vampire, but watching his quest for self-acceptance and redemption for his own monstrous traits is, like I said, it's a storyline that just becomes more appealing to me as time goes on. Although I do admit I probably pay more attention to Morgan and Felicia than the other characters. Yes, moving on past that. So yes, the Darkstalkers OVA, 4 episodes. Great if you can find it. Makes for a fun watch, especially as we're approaching October and the Halloween season. Okay. One moment here. Ah, yes, Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. A fitting end to the movie trilogy, because there are only 3 movies. That being said, after the slight dip in quality, or after the slight dip in with Temple of Doom, Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, I thought was a good return to form. More consistent, a more consistent emotional tone. Still great special effects as always, and I think this one is probably my favorite of the 3. I know, objectively speaking, there are a lot of people who would argue that Raiders of the Lost Ark was the best overall, but I like this one. And I'd say probably I would attribute that both to the focus on the Christian faith and uh, legends here in regards to the Holy Grail, as well as the inclusion of Sean Connery as Dr. Henry Jones. The I mentioned it in my overview of this movie that Temple of Doom let us see Indy as a paternal figure with Short Round, and this one flipped flipped that dynamic around. We got to see him as the son to Dr. Henry Jones, and I that was a dynamic I really enjoyed in this movie. Oh yes, and another running theme in this one that I thought was important to look at was the value of was the importance of faith and belief. One of the things we see at numerous points is what happens when non-believers or people who don't believe properly get their hands on the Grail, as opposed to somebody who takes it a bit more seriously. Didn't it did not end well for some people. But yes, Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. Good movie, my favorite out of the trilogy. With the trilogy finished, what was next? Oh yes, WKRP. This was a fun show back in the day. Well, it was back before my time. But WKRP was a nice little sitcom from the what was it, early 70s? But it followed the everyday trials and tribulations of a struggling radio station in Cincinnati, Ohio. The as although considering how things are going today, radio may not the concept may not have as much relevance, but this was one that really succeeded due to its cast of unique, quirky characters. The one I specifically picked out for the vault at this point was the Turkeys Away episode in the first season. That was probably one of the best pieces of TV comedy ever made. The gist of it was that the station manager, Mr. Carlson, wanted to run a promotion for Thanksgiving, a promotion that involved several dozen live turkeys and a helicopter. That didn't go the way he wanted to. Nice bit of great bit of comedic build up, and as well as payoff near the end of the episode, and it's responsible for a few internet memes. It's probably the most well-known episode of the series, but if you ever get a chance, the entirety of WKRP in Cincinnati was a good show. Just very good, start to finish. And we really do need more. It would really be nice to see more series like this today. It was just one that had a simple premise of showing what kind of troubles a radio station would face, and had some very cleverly written script and good performances from all of the chosen actors. And it helps that, from what I understand, the writers of the series had experience working in a radio themselves. Yep, just quality TV programming from a bygone era. Oh, yes. Ah, this is a funny one. So, well, I would pose it that if Galaxy Quest is the perfect Star Trek movie, and The Incredibles is the perfect I should move that list, is the perfect Fantastic Four movie, Without a Clue is the perfect, would be my perfect Sherlock Holmes movie. Just, it took a lot of the familiar, or it took nearly all of the familiar trappings of the Sherlock Holmes mythos, and just flipped it around by asking a simple question: what if Watson were the genius and Holmes were the buffoon? And what we get is one of the most cleverly written comedies I've ever seen. And it's not just a good Sherlock Holmes parody, but it also is a movie that stands perfectly well on its own. And rather than be a rather than act as a deconstruction of the character and his stories, it's more of a subversion, as it just, again, like I said, flips the dynamic of genius and assistant. So we get a great, and we get and the on screen dynamic between Michael Caine and Ben Kingsley is great to watch. Two brilliant actors just working with a very well written comedy. I have to admit, though, I'm not as familiar with the writings of Sherlock Holmes. My main experience with those stories comes from what have I seen? A number of well, if anyone's ever seen the old PBS show Wishbone, that was they looked at a couple of Sherlock Holmes stories. I also watched the Sherlock Hound anime some time ago. That was a good one. But Without a Clue is... I'm also familiar with a lot of Sherlock Holmes story elements, just that I've picked up from glancing at other adaptations. But out of the ones that I've seen, I think, well, Without a Clue is definitely a top quality adaptation. I should probably change that font. Either that or move the picture, or move these shrink these thumbnails. Oh yes, a Charlie Brown Christmas. A nice little classic of the Christmas season. Out of all the Christmas movies that are out there, this one and A Muppet Christmas Carol are my two favorites. And this one really is just nice and this is just a nice viewing experience, mainly because of just how simple and earnest it is in in its approach to the season. And it's also brief. This was just a short TV special that only ran for about a half an hour, so easy to watch. So it's nice and quick to watch. And I think a lot of people can probably sympathize with Charlie Brown's predicament in the movie, given that it's about, or given that it's the Christmas season and he's just not feeling to cheer. So if you're somebody who has struggled with negativity during the holiday season, or maybe just might not be feeling in the best of moods, I'd suggest popping this one in, or looking it up to watch. It's just a nice little heartfelt special. Oh, whoops. Okay, Ghost in the Shell 2 Innocence. And this one, I wouldn't say it was as good as the first movie. I mean, the first one was a real groundbreaking piece of anime entertainment, and it's hard to capture that sort of lightning twice. But I'd say it was an adequate follow-up. Mostly what I enjoyed was that since Major Motoko Kusanagi was absent for most of the movie, we got to see the other members of Section 9 act. Pretty sure it was Section 9. I really hope I'm not messing that up. But yes, and we also got to see the focus on Bato and to a lesser extent Togusa solving as they're solving a mysterious crime involving robotic dolls in the city. And it does approach a lot of the same questions as the first movie, namely the shrinking division of man and machine, but it more focuses on the other side of the equation. The first Ghost in the Shell just asked about what would happen as humans become more and more machine, with things like full body prosthetics, uplinks to the internet, or uplinks to cyberspace. This one more focuses on what happens with machines as they become more and more human, what with the dolls and this concept of ghost dubbing, where they seem to have souls shoved into them. But I won't give too many more details, both because I already have a review up and because this one's a bit more of a head trip than the first one, so there's a lot to go over. But again, if you enjoyed the first movie, you will probably like this one as well. I will say, though, that I'm not quite on board with the insertion of CGI effects into this one. It doesn't mesh as well with it doesn't mesh as well with the traditional animation, and I really wish they would have just stuck to the same style of traditional animation throughout that we saw in the first movie. Hang on. Hmm. Sorry, I'm talking a little bit more and more than usual, so I need to hydrate more often. This withered, desecrated corpse needs moisture too. All right. What was entry number 12? Oh yes, the return of Captain Invincible. This was an odd one. So, Return of Captain Invincible was a superhero parody released in the 70s, I believe, which puts it over nearly 50 years old. Yeah, so like I said, a superhero parody musical, which sounds strange. That was the style back at the time. Sooner or later, every genre gets parody. And this one was a bit hit or miss. Not all of the humor lands, but when it does, it's fairly entertaining. And the execution's a bit sloppy, and the special effects really do not hold up over time. But it actually did have what I would call the bones of a good story underneath, namely that it focuses on a superhero who's been stuck at rock bottom and is both trying to recover from his from alcoholism and other habits, and just try and get back into the spirit of heroism as a growing threat approaches. I do enjoy, like I said, though, some of the performances, like I said in my review, some of the performances are pretty good, specifically that of the star, Alan Arkin, and the villainous Mr. Midnight, played by Christopher Lee. Oh, and you can tell that even if the movie itself was not that great, Christopher Lee was having fun playing the bad guy. And he really showed off during the musical numbers too. if you ever have a chance, just look up Christopher Lee, Name Your Poison. I can tell you right now, I'd watch a lot. I'd be willing to watch more superhero movies made today if we got supervillains who taunted the heroes with songs about their personal demons. But, yeah. So yes, the soundtrack, especially the musical numbers, were surprisingly good, and Alan Arkin had a surprisingly good voice. I know he's a well-known actor, but I didn't know before watching this movie that he actually had some talent for singing as well. One interesting thing to note about this film is that it has been released on physical media, and the one in my vault is a DVD from back in the day. But it has also been on streaming, albeit edited. I found this on Tubi and gave it a browse and found out that one of the musical numbers, Heaven in Your Eyes, was cut. I think they trimmed out some of a few of the jokes that didn't quite land. Yet another example of why buying physical media is important. If you want to get the full version of this movie, make sure you get the DVD wherever you can. Although I'm sure there are other places to find I'm sure there are other places online where you can watch it if you're not feeling overly scrupulous. But it's not top quality cinema by any means, but it's it certainly has its moments, and it's a unique viewing experience, I'll say that. Excuse me. Let's see, I haven't misspelled anything, have I? Nope, good so far. Oh, wait, no, that's actually episode 12, not 13. One moment while I fix that. Better. Okay, Appleseed, the CGI movie. So I mentioned in my review for this, or at least in the thumbnail, or the title of my overview, that this was basically, that I considered this the slick, shiny cousin for Ghost in the Shell, and if you've seen both movies, you can definitely find the parallels. Dystopian future, heavy emphasis, or lots of cyborg and cybernetic elements. A look at the relationship between man and machine, a combat-ready female protagonist with a supersized male partner. There are some similarities, but there were also some differences. Namely, I found that Appleseed was a bit, let's say more positive. Everything was a bit cleaner here, since most of this movie takes place in the city of Olympus. Pretty sure it was Olympus. It offers a brighter look at the future than Ghost in the Shell did. And this movie is entirely CGI animation, which I actually found worked quite well. It was a lot more fluid than other CGI projects are. At certain points, though, it does come off as a little bit too polished. Everything looks a little bit too clean and shiny. It doesn't have the texture that traditional animation did, but the action sequences did flow quite well. But so if you're looking for something related to Ghost in the Shell, but with a much brighter tone, then the Appleseed movie is a pretty good one. And I know it's part of a larger franchise, so one of these days I'll have to try and find copies of the manga and other entries and other movies and series. Let's fix that typo. There we go. Oh yes, Crimson Tide. Now that is a special movie. The whole movie itself can be considered a competition in acting. Denzel Washington versus Gene Hackman, and it's the audience who wins. Now, my experience with Gene Hackman's acting, or with Gene Hackman's performances before this, were more on the lighter side. I had seen him in, let's see, what have I seen him in before this? Mostly as Lex Luthor in the Superman movies of the late 1970s, which are standout features on their own, at least the first two. And then I had also seen him in his brief role in Mel Brooks's Young Frankenstein. Oh yes, he had that was a good performance in that one. But shortly after his passing, I decided to check this one out after reading a good review of it, and this one is this is good cinema. And I would also venture to call it an excellent study in conflict resolution. Throughout the whole movie, we do get, the whole movie is essentially an examination of the breakdown between, in negotiations between Denzel Washington's character and Gene Hackman's character, as Gene Hackman plays the commanding officer of a submarine, and Denzel plays plays his, what would you call it? What was the term? Like, so, lieutenant, essentially his first mate. But the movies also does a good job in developing the individual viewpoints of each man throughout here, so you understand where they sit or where they stand, or you understand their personal philosophies and how they approach their work aboard the sub. And it also shows that despite their different backgrounds and different philosophies, they do respect each other. And because the movie also takes the time to develop both men, you also understand how their conflict breaks down and where they finally come to blows. And I think what's also very important about this movie is how things wrap up near the end. Namely, it acknowledges that both men have good points in how they approach an ensuing crisis with when they don't have all of the answers, and it shows that their individual decisions aren't entirely wrong, but they're also not entirely right. And sorry. And importantly, even after the conflict is settled, they're both able to reconcile, and they still manage to respect each other despite how hostile they were earlier in the movie. And I think that's also a very important lesson that we need to see more of. But yes, Crimson Tide, excellent movie. Go see it if you haven't already. I will be back in just a moment. I need to fetch more water from somewhere in the vault. I will be back in just a few minutes. Oof. And I'm back. Now, what was next on the list? Oh yes, Wrath of the Ninja, the Yotoden movie. This one makes for a good bit of entertainment. It was late '80s, and it's a good example of the animation style of the time. Now, let me shrink that thumbnail just a little bit. There we go. So, Wrath of the Ninja, it was actually, from what I've learned, it was actually 3 OVAs originally in Japan, 45 minutes each. And unfortunately, they trimmed out about 15 minutes from each one so that they could make a 90-minute movie to be released over here. I really want to get I really would like to get these in their original format, but that's going to take some searching. In the meantime, though, this made for, well, I would say it was adequately entertaining. Nice adventure focusing on 3 ninjas and their sacred blades. Now, I mentioned this was made in the late 80s, but with traditional animation, and it worked very well for the. It worked very well. Holds up, and it holds up nicely. Fluid action scenes, surprisingly bloody. We were. This one's not afraid to get violent when it needs to be. And despite the fact that some material was cut out, we do get to see good development of the main trio, as I mentioned in my review. So, this one makes for a bit of good viewing, but I think it's probably one best seen in the original full format. Oh, and I did mention earlier, and I did not, almost forgot to say that this one's also best watched in the original Japanese. The English actors try, but it's the quality of English dubbing that you would expect from an earlier time. Still, like I said, it is an adequately entertaining movie. Oh, Action Jackson. This was a fun movie. This was a really fun movie. This one is every bit the 80s action movie you would hope it to be. If you've ever seen those, whenever I think of this movie, my mind drifts to the McBain sketches, or the little McBain jokes in The Simpsons. If you've ever seen those, you've got a pretty good idea of what to expect in this. A hot-tempered police officer who has to act outside of the book, a wealthy, affluent businessman who's with a scheme of his own, several lovely femme fatales, and explosive action sequences. Like I said, a very fun movie, and it's also one that should have put, one that should have put Carl Weathers on the map as a leading man. I know he's had his fame mostly in the Rocky movies and in Predator, and also in the Mandalorian series on Disney Plus. Though I'm in no hurry to watch any of the Disney Star Wars materials. But from what I understand, he was very well liked on that show. But Action Jackson was one that really showed that he did have talent to be a leading man. He's able to be serious when the occasion calls for it. He also had a nice laid-back charm in some of the quieter scenes, and he could also chew the scenery when he needed to. Action Jackson's a very fun movie to watch, especially if you're the type who enjoys the explosive 80s action movies. Let me adjust the font color for that. Okay, I can't do it there. Bear with me for just a few minutes. Here we go. How does that look? That does not work. No, that blends in too much. Perhaps a lighter blue. What about flat black? Well, let's see how that looks for a little while. You know, on second thought, it blends in too much with the dark parts of these thumbnails. Yeah, let's just go back to white. Okay, the next movie. Oh, yes. Ninja Scroll. Now, this was an intense movie. So much like Wrath of the Ninja, this one was also one that follows three warriors out to defend the land from a gang of monstrous ninja, or monstrous evil ninja. This one was much more intense, though. Very bloody, very graphic in more ways than one. I do have to admit, though, as intense as it was, the animation quality was on an incredible level. From what I understand, it's the same animation studio as a later movie, Vampire Hunter D, Bloodlust, and you can definitely see how Vampire Hunter D was, how the style carried over to that movie. It's very detailed, very fluid, with certain close-up shots that look like they could have just been portraits. And again, much like Wrath of the Ninja, the focus is on the main trio and the development of their individual character arcs. So it's a very brutal movie, but it also adds in some good drama and character development. So if you're looking for a mature action anime film, you can give this one a try. Funny thing is that for safety's sake, I did put this one as an age restricted just because there is some intense material in this one, but I didn't quite expect this particular review to be to get such low numbers on my channel. Oh well, live and learn. Adventures in Babysitting. This one's a fun movie. And it's also a good testament to what you can do with or what you can do with a simple premise and clever writing. Essentially the premise is babysitter has to rescue her friend from being trapped in the city, and due to certain circumstances, she's essentially forced to bring along her young charges with her. It's a very simple and straightforward story idea, but it's also one that, thanks to the cleverness of the writing, is escalates into a growing series of miniature disasters. What you get out of it, though, is a very well written urban adventure. And and it's probably also an excellent example of a female lead who's seems very much out of her depth in a lot of these encounters in the big city, but she manages to get through them with a bit of luck, a very strong spirit, and some quick thinking. So she makes for a very good. She makes for a fun character to watch. And the kids the kids are well written too. They're not. They manage to be entertaining, but they don't come across as dead weight or annoying in their performances. Another testament to good writing is how each individual situation seems to be so unique and out there that they encounter, but they do flow from one to the next in a fairly logical manner. So, in the hands of lesser writers, it would seem very choppy and uneven, but the movie has a very nice flow to it. It's also a bit of a fun casting gag that Vincent D'Onofrio, the man very well known today as the Kingpin in Netflix's Daredevil series, actually has a small role in here as a man who could easily pass for Thor. Just a fun bit of meta humor. Another great element of this movie is how well even the supporting cast is written, since due to the nature of it, the movie also, I mentioned in my review that the movie also offers a number of vignettes into city life, framed through the experience of these sheltered suburban kids, and just about every character in this movie, from the main adventuring party to supporting characters to even minor one-off characters, makes an impression. So if you get a chance, give this movie a watch. It's a fun one, and it also makes for a good family movie. Okay, now we're getting into the movies that I was into the stretch of Superman adaptations that I looked at for my channel for a little while. So one of the earliest adaptations of the character for was the set of animated shorts made by Fleischer Studios way back in the 40s. And despite being made way back then, it is some stellar animation quality that really holds up today. Each of these shorts is only about, I would say 10 minutes roughly. A little bit more, a little bit less. So you can binge the entirety of them in the span of an afternoon or an evening. The art style is very detailed for the time, and animation is very fluid. Great to watch. And it's really a nice lasting testament to the quality animation techniques of a bygone era. Again, I just don't make them like this anymore. And well, we've had plenty of adaptations of Superman over the years. This was one of the earliest ones, and I think it's one that deserves more attention. And it's not just the animation that works. The soundtrack is great as well. Superman has his own leitmotif in the movie, which in these features, which really helps to accentuate really helps to heighten the sense of heroism when he acts. Excuse me. And it was also an excellent illustration of the spirit of the Superman stories, namely, it did a great job displaying his collection of powers at the time and his dedication to fighting for truth and justice. The American way was not added to the slogan until later installments in the overall Superman franchise. Now, an interesting thing to note is that while the animation quality was spectacular for these, it was also expensive. So after about, I think it was the 9th short, production switched from Fleischer Studios to a different house. It was Famous Studios, I believe. There was a slight dip in animation quality, but not too bad, and it's still very much well done by today's standards. Now, granted, after the switch, there was a bit more of a lean towards incorporating elements of World War II into these shorts. Still, this does remain an excellent adaptation of Superman, and just another classic piece of animation and storytelling from, again, a bygone era. And these are another set of, or this is another series that, like Nosferatu, is in the public domain. So while you can certainly buy copies for yourself on physical media, you don't necessarily need to get a chance to watch it on a number of platforms. Still, I prefer to get it on physical media because why take the chance of losing it when someone decides to shut their servers down? Oh, yes. Superman, the 1978 movie starring Christopher Reeve, sorry. This is what I would consider it the gold standard for adapting Superman for the silver screen. Much like Indiana Jones, everything really came together for this one. Great cast, good writing, excellent set designs, and a lot of special effects that really do hold up well over the years. And as far as I'm concerned, Christopher Reeve, there have been plenty of actors who have played Superman to various degrees, and they all bring their own strengths and weaknesses, but as far as I'm concerned, Christopher Reeve was the best one. The man did a good job playing kind of the extremes of, or playing one character to two different extremes. He really nailed the awkward, bumbling nature of Clark Kent, as well as the confident, serious Superman, and he managed to convey a nice, unique, wholesome charm in throughout the entire movie. One of my personal favorite moments, especially in recent years, is a small one where after Superman has an interview with Lois Lane, very well-known scene where he takes her flying, Clark Kent shows up at her apartment, and so one of the best, and it's an excellent illustration of Christopher Reeve's acting talent where Lois steps away for a moment and you see Clark Kent hunched over, glasses on, heavy glasses on. And then Christopher Reeve takes the glasses off, stands up, squares his shoulders, seems to gain a few extra inches in height, and looks, despite the fact that not much changes, all he has to do is shift his demeanor a bit, and it looks like two completely different characters. And I think that scene alone, and that scene, more than just about any, probably illustrates why he was such a good pick for the role. And there were also plenty of other excellent performances in the movie. Marlon Brando made for a good Jor-El, and I think Gene Hackman had more than a little bit of fun playing Lex Luthor as the criminal mastermind. One of the other elements that I really like, that I appreciated in this film was the aesthetic of Krypton and the Fortress of Solitude. The movie did a really good job conveying a sort of otherworldly feeling with both those environments. And I might I might speak highly of this movie, but I'm not entirely blind to a few plot holes in the movie. Namely the fact that Lois winds up that Superman's too quick to reveal some of his vulnerabilities to Lois during an interview, namely his inability to see through lead, and there's also the fact that Lex Luthor makes a lot of tremendous leaps in logic to deduce the existence and nature of kryptonite. And yes, we're all familiar with the idea that spinning the world around does not reverse time. That being said, though, it's still an excellent movie, both as an adaptation of Superman and as a standalone film. Now, the version I have in my vault is only has the original theatrical cut. I do understand that there is a director's cut out there with about an extra 8 minutes left in, which really do need to I really need to track down. Shouldn't be very difficult. I just need to get on that. There's also another extended edition that's nearly 3 hours long. That from what I understand was originally made for TV broadcasting, but I believe Richard Donner has, from what I understand as well, Richard Donner is not fond of that version. So if I can get the director's cut, I would be satisfied. Okay, so Superman the Animated Series. That was a fun one. It was nice to revisit that one a little while ago. So Superman the Animated Series was one of the cartoons that I watched when I was a little Revenant. And while I still say that the 1978 movie is probably the gold standard for adapting the character for film, the animated series was probably my favorite adaptation of the character. Given the nature of comic book movies or comic book franchises, how long they last, and the sheer number of characters that you can see in the average superhero story, I think most of them lend themselves more to a TV series for adaptations rather than movies. Mostly because a TV series with numerous episodes and several seasons does allow more time to develop the main characters, as well as introducing side characters, supporting characters, and the rogues gallery for any hero. And production values were very good for this one. You had some solid animation quality, great soundtrack too. The opening theme song, or Superman's opening theme tune, is very, very memorable for this one. And there was also a very talented vocal cast for this one. I know everyone says that Kevin Conroy is the defining voice for Batman, which I agree. But I would also say that if Kevin Conroy is the defining Batman, the definitive Batman voice, Tim Daly would be the definitive voice for Superman. At least in my humble opinion. I thought he did an excellent job playing both Clark Kent as a bit more laid back and casual, while Superman, his version of Superman, still had the seriousness, confidence that you would expect from the role. Another voice to vocal selection of note was Clancy Brown as Lex Luthor. The man's got a nice, an impressive resume on his own. I know most people know him today. I think he's familiar these days as the Red Death in... Is that the character's name? Red Death? You'll have to forgive me, I've not seen Venture Brothers, but I do understand he plays the Red Death in that series, and also has a role in SpongeBob, but from what I understand. But Clancy Brown makes for an excellent Lex Luthor in this series. And I think he was probably having more than a little bit of fun as well, in much the same way Gene Hackman did. And this series and Batman the Animated Series were pretty much the cornerstone of the DC animated universe to come. One thing I also respect a great deal about this series was, especially along with other superhero cartoons of the time, was how well it used its time. Runtime, I should say. The three-part opener for Superman the Animated Series, Last Son of Krypton, actually managed to cover a lot and in a very efficient manner without feeling too rushed. In 3 episodes, less than 90 minutes, we got to see the last days of Krypton, Superman's growth on Earth and the emergence of his powers, as well as his first adventures in Metropolis and the start of his rivalry with Lex Luthor. If you ask me, this movie, Batman the Animated Series, and the entire DC animated universe of the time, which should be the blueprint for any sort of cinematic universe of today, but I'll get to that in a little bit. So if you want to see if you're interested in seeing an excellent adaptation of Superman from a past generation, this is, I would consider this top tier. So that covers all of the older titles that I've reviewed since I started my channel. But I have also taken a look at the occasional new movie here and there. I'll put that list back up in a little bit. Well, actually, I'll leave it up. Allow me one moment to alter the font just a little bit. That works. I'd say that's even better. So, as far as new movies go, Yes. So initially I was planning to make this a brief glimpse at the new set of videos. This was initially intended as just a bit of a joke series where I would go out, watch a new movie, and then just post a brief opinion, maybe 30 seconds or less about it. Now, I did eventually turn those into full reviews, reasons I will get to briefly. But Sonic 3 was the first of those, was the first of the new movies I decided to start reviewing for this channel, and this has been a fun film series to follow. I think I was about as worried as anyone else way back when the first movie was announced some years back, or all those years ago. Well, I say all those years ago, but really it was just 2020 when the first one came out. But I think I was as nervous as anyone else when some of the plot details leaked and the initial design came out, and ugh, I'm very glad they changed it. And the first movie was a lot of fun. And I was very pleasantly surprised at how good it was. And I'd say the Sonic movies since then have been probably the best surprise in the entertainment world over the past few years that I've seen. They've all been very fun. They've all been very positive, and they've all been faithful to this. And while storylines have mostly been original, given that they take place on Earth and not in any of the areas native to the games, it's still been very faithful to the spirit of the stories. They've done an excellent job getting the characters of the main trio right. And I was also skeptical with the initial casting of Jim Carrey as Dr. Robotnik, but I'd say he's done a remarkable job. I do hope they start to take the character in a more serious direction. I think especially in this third movie, Jim Carrey's mannerisms have started to, well, I think they're starting to get to be a bit much. Oh, that's the wrong tab. So they started to get to be a little bit much. I mean, he's good at the role, but I really would like to see a more serious depiction of Robotnik, but which we might get in the fourth movie, depending on whether or not the character survived, or the end of this one. Sorry, spoiler, or a little bit of a spoiler, and I am going to get into a few more spoilers here. I thought they handled Shadow's storyline very well, and another minor spoiler here, but I'm very much looking forward to seeing Metal Sonic in the fourth movie. Like I said, the OVA from the 90s probably had my favorite interpretation of the character, but I really hope they manage to. I really hope his what we see in the fourth movie is just as impressive. Funny enough, while I have been collecting the previous movies, I have not gotten this one on physical media yet. I need to fix that. But yes, Sonic the Hedgehog 3, another good entry in a fine series of movies, and also one that proves that, and also another one that that continues to break the curse that video game adaptations have had over the years. Yes, Nosferatu. I think I'm about as skeptical about remakes as anyone else, but this one, this was an excellent film. The director Robert Eggers really nailed the dark, brooding ambiance that you would expect from a Nosferatu film. There's a aren't any. I mean, there are a few jump scares here and there, but where it really excels, where the movie really excels, is in creating that pervading sense of dread that lasts all throughout, right up until the end. And casting was great here too. Excellent performances from Bill Skarsgård as Orlok. That guy can really pull off movie monsters quite well. Nicholas Hoult was good as the main character, although he does seem to have a bit of, between this movie and Renfield, he is developing a bad habit of getting into messy working relationships with vampires. Lily Rose Depp, great job as the character of Ellen. She pulled off the crazy performances very well. I'd say that Willem Dafoe probably stole the show, as he tends to do. As Professor von Franz, he was one of the most memorable characters in there. I do enjoy a good eccentric character in these sorts of movies. So if this movie's any indication, then I need to start looking at Robert Eggers' other movies. Oh, and this episode of A Brief Glimpse at the New is also still one that I was doing as a very short video, so it's not a complete review. That happened. The complete reviews of new movies started with the next entry on this list. James Gunn's Superman by James Gunn. A James Gunn production. Well, directed by him anyway. Although, given a lot of the promotional material, felt like he just kind of hijacked the entire thing. Now, I would like to make it clear that I really did want to enjoy this movie going in. Given that this was going to be the cornerstone of the new DC cinematic universe, I really was hoping that this was going to live up to the legacy of previous adaptations. Unfortunately, I didn't leave the theater with the impression that it had. Yeah, granted, I did already state the problems I had with this movie in my review, namely that Superman's pretty much on his back foot for most of this movie. He couldn't seem to win any of his fights on his own. Plot elements were just dropped here and there. Not much lead up. They're just kind of thrown in, and they're very much just thrown in. Character assassinations occur for no very good reason. What they did to Jor-El and Lara is a travesty, and there's also the portrayal of Supergirl as just some hard-drinking party girl. I was less than impressed with that part, I can tell you. There's also got a very strange sense of immaturity throughout the movie. Not, part of it's through, mostly you see hints of it in performances here and there, just the idea. Sorry, my throat's getting even drier right now. But having seen previous, or with the previous iterations of Superman I've seen, those ones had a very strong, characters had a much more mature sense to their behaviors. This one is just, well, I suppose to illustrate my point, one of the scenes I pointed out in my review was the interview, quote unquote, between Superman and Lois early on in the film. I know a lot of people like to point out that that's an excellent illustration of his character as somebody who really does put a great value on human life. And to be fair, they did make that. And to be fair, yes, it does illustrate that rather bluntly. But throughout the whole interview, well, put it bluntly, I did not really consider that to be much of an interview. In my opinion, it had more the sense of a teacher or mother or caretaker trying to pry an answer out of a stubborn child. I know that opinion may wind up clashing with what other people think, but again, that is just my interpretation. And it also didn't help that, sadly, James Gunn just could not keep his own sensibilities out of the movie. I think a lot of the humor in there was forced in where it didn't need to be. There's also the fact that he had to make this an ensemble film rather than just a movie that focused solely on Superman. Also, it felt his preference in music was forced in just about as much as his style of humor. It felt very out of place for Superman and Lois to be talking about punk rock bands. Ugh. That, again, just felt out of character for both of them. Not to mention the theme of cancel culture, of Superman fighting cancel culture. That just, ugh, we could have done without that. And then there's the fact that, and then there's the imagining of Krypto as that little rat terrier. I mentioned in my review that that for all of the hype he got in the trailers and promotion, Krypto really didn't add much to this movie. I like dogs as much as the next undead vault prisoner, but he could have been written out of the movie with little to no consequence. Another problem with, this being an ensemble piece is that most of the secondary characters actually wound up moving the plot along. Seriously, how do you let Superman get outshone in his own movie? With everything that gone on, they really could have just trimmed down the script, made it a bit leaner. We would have gotten a better film out of it. Now, that's not to say that I completely disliked the movie. There were some elements that I thought were well done. I think the casting is good overall. David Corenswet does a good job. I think he's a good actor and probably a good pick for the character of Superman. He just wasn't given the strongest script. I would like for him to get another chance to play the character, which will probably occur in the future, but with stronger writing to give him an opportunity to shine. And much as in the 1978 movie, I also really liked the Kryptonian aesthetic we see here and there, mostly in the Fortress of Solitude. I thought that design was well done. And I will admit that, yes, there were moments here and there where they did try to follow through on the spirit of Superman stories, but once again, I just found that a lot of the major flaws in the movie really kind of got in the way of that. So, like I said in my review, not one that not one that I'm in a hurry to put on my shelf. Yeah, let's not get snide with this. Okay, we have one more entry to go. Yeah. Now, I'm going to say this as somebody who has seen the original Naked Gun movies, as well as Airplane, Top Secret, and the other works produced by Abrams, Zucker, and Zucker. But the Naked Gun was surprisingly good. Or the new Naked Gun was surprisingly good. Once again, as is the case with most modern revivals of old franchises, I was skeptical. More so when I heard that the original creators wouldn't have a hand in this one. But all in all, I had a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun watching this. I wouldn't say that it is quite on the. I wouldn't say that it's quite to the quality of the originals. It's very hard. It's hard to do in just about any case. But there was a good amount of humor, plenty of jokes. That enough jokes in here that even if you didn't laugh at, that even if one didn't land, another one was waiting to hit you right afterwards. And there's also excellent, and I really did enjoy Liam Neeson's performance in this movie. I think the man's got a history of a number of different roles, mostly drama, and then his foray into action. And I think this movie proves that he can pull off that deadpan, serious comic delivery quite well. And his chemistry with Pamela Anderson was entertaining to watch as well. I understand that they started dating after the movie, and it's nice to see that influence their performances. They're both fun to watch in this one, and Pamela Anderson I found to be a surprisingly good actress. I don't think I've seen her in. I think I know her more for being a public celebrity than her acting and talent, but she she was she gave a very talented performance in this one. I enjoyed it. There were a few missed opportunities in this movie. Specifically, we didn't get the classic Naked Gun opening sequence with the police car. Yeah, and I would have liked to see uh, not Norberg play a bigger role in this. He had a there was a good joke with him in the promotional material, but sadly he didn't make much of a he didn't have much impact on the film itself, and I really think we could have used him. I really think he could have had a better part. All in all, this one was a very solid comedy, and sadly though, from what I hear, it hasn't been doing too well at the box office, which is a real shame. I think we need a revival of comedy movies these days, and I really want this one to succeed. All right, so those are all of the movies, anime, TV shows that I've taken a look at in this year that I've been active. As far as future plans go, it's going to be a while before I put in another movie review. Right now, my immediate plan is to pull some titles out of the vault for October. I've got a few fun ones that I'm looking forward to revisiting and reviewing here. I'm paying more attention to my streams these days. Speaking of which, later on this week I will be continuing Sonic September. I got Sonic the Hedgehog 2 to be played on this Wednesday at 7. That's going to be off of one of my original Genesis cartridges. And then Thursday is going to be Sonic 3 and Knuckles. That one, while I do have the Genesis cartridges for that, and it is available on recent compilation releases, I was able to get it installed I was able to install my original Windows, was it 95? Yes. I was able to get my original Windows 95 CD installed on my current computer. Yes, I'm looking forward to playing that one. It's the, like I said, it's the PC version. Which means that it has the alternate sound, it has the alternate musical tracks for several of the levels. So I'm looking forward to starting that one this Thursday, and that will also be at 7. Those are immediate plans for the time being. And yeah, starting in October with the Halloween season coming, I'll be getting back more, and I'll be spending more time on movie reviews again. So I'm looking forward to introducing a few titles during that time, and then moving back, and then pulling out some other entries, or pulling out some other volumes from the vault after that time, after such time has passed. With that being said, those of you who may have stopped by for the stream, and those of you who tuned in, who are watching the VOD, I thank you very much for spending your time here. I hope you, if you've seen any of the movies on this list and you've got your own opinions, feel free to drop a comment. If there are any if there are any here that you've not seen before and you're interested in, drop a comment here. Maybe in a future stream, maybe in a future video, just letting me know what you think of them. And I hope to see you soon at on one of my streams in the near future. But until we meet again, I will bid you all a very fond adieu.